Hello, my name is Randy Bush. Thank you for joining once more for this Into the Words mini podcast. We come out of Woods Memorial Presbyterian Church, and we're glad to have you with us. We were doing a series of these looking at a variety of books, and a friend wrote to me after I did a short podcast on Mary Oliver and said, "Oh, I sure hope you're going to mention Billy Collins." Well, he was definitely in my pile of books to remember and to lift up, and so we're going to talk about Billy Collins today. Billy Collins is an American poet. Again, poetry is critical for people of faith because so much of Scripture is actually written in formats that feels more like poetry than prose. Something as simple as, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," or "Faith, hope, and love, these three abide, but the greatest of these is love." To feel the meaning of those words is to have a poet's sensibility. Billy Collins is an American poet. He was born in 1941, and while the name may sound fully Irish and loquacious, he's from Manhattan and has a great style of writing clearly, writing with an observance of the mundane, with a strong sense of humor throughout his poems. I've found his poems as great offerings to simply have a book by the bedside and to read a couple in the evenings. So I'll be reading from a couple selections, but the main selection is his book called Sailing Alone Around the Room. This came out probably 15, 20 years ago. It's an anthology. He's written many others since then. Collins was the poet laureate for the United States in 2001 to 2003. But again, when you think of poetry, you don't automatically think of Shakespeare or rhyming schemes or somewhat obscure material. Billy Collins reminds us that even in the everyday, there's much to be celebrated. As an example, here's just the opening of a poem called Forgetfulness. The name of the author is the first to go, followed obediently by the title, the plot, the heartbreaking conclusion, the entire novel, which suddenly becomes one you have never read, never even heard of, as if one by one the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. And he goes on to whimsically name all the other things we forget as we get older. He wrote a cluster of poems called the Piano Lessons, or Piano Lessons. He, as an adult, started taking piano lessons, and so he wanted to describe that process a bit. And so he wrote little short paragraph poems that described his experience. So here's several sections from Piano Lessons. My teacher lies on the floor with a bad back off to the side of the piano. I sit up straight on the stool. He begins by telling me that every key is like a different room, and I am a blind man who must learn to walk through all 12 of them without hitting the furniture. I feel myself reach for the first doorknob. Number 2, he tells me that every scale has a shape, and I have to learn how to hold each one in my hands. At home, I practice with my eyes closed. C is an open book. D is a vase with 2 handles. G flat is a black boot. And E has the legs of a bird. Number 5, I'm learning to play It Might As Well Be Spring. But my left hand would rather be jingling the change in the darkness of my pocket or taking a nap on the armrest. I have to drag him into the music like a difficult and neglected child. This is the revenge of the one who never gets to hold the pen or wave goodbye, and now who never gets to play the melody. And then at the end, even when I am not playing, I think about the piano. It is the largest, heaviest, and most beautiful object in this house. I pause in the doorway just to take it all in, and late at night I picture it downstairs, this hallucination standing on 3 legs, this curious beast with its enormous moonlit smile. As a pianist myself, I appreciate his images as he talks about piano lessons. At one point, Billy Collins actually offered a poem where he's in a dialogue with Mary Oliver, who I mentioned earlier. And so the title of this poem is called "To a Stranger Born in Some Distant Country Hundreds of Years from Now," which seems odd, but then he has this quote from Mary Oliver. "I write poems for a stranger who will be born in some distant country hundreds of years from now." And so this is what Billy Collins has to offer in terms of advice to this stranger from the future. Nobody here likes a wet dog. No one wants anything to do with a dog that is wet from being out in the rain or retrieving a stick from a lake. Look how she wanders among the crowded pub tonight, going from one person to another, hoping for a pat on the head, a rub behind the ears, something that could be given with one hand without even wrinkling the conversation. But everyone pushes her away, some with a knee, others with the sole of a boot. Even the children who don't realize she is wet until they go to pet her, push her away, and then wipe their hands on their clothes. And whenever she heads towards me, I show her my palm, and she turns aside. O stranger of the future, O inconceivable being, whatever the shape of your house, however you scoot from place to place, no matter how strange and colorless the clothes you may wear, I bet nobody there likes a wet dog either. I bet everybody in your pub, even the children, pushes her away. So the poem is read with, I think, a glimmer in the eye and a half laugh to the future beings and future dogs. Last poem I'm going to share comes from a different collection called The Trouble with Poetry and Other Poems. And it's a poem called The Lanyard, and I'll read the last half of it. Collins is evidently in a library or pulling out a dictionary and stumbles on the word lanyard. And it brings up very strong memories, not only about a lanyard itself, but about his mother. I have never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one, if that's what you did with them, but that did not keep me at camp from crossing strand over strand again and again until I'd made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted teaspoons of medicine to my lips, set cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said. Here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is my breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift. Not the archaic truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the 2-tone lanyard from my hands, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. So find a poet that you like, dip into the words, find beauty in the rhymes and in the thoughts, and may it help you find beauty and poetry in Scripture and in your life today. Thank you for joining me for this segment of Into the Words.